People once criticized the Book of Mormon because it spoke of the building of a temple in the land of Nephi. Of course, the book of Deuteronomy says that temples shouldn't be built outside of Jerusalem, but there was a particular reason why the Deuteronomists wanted to concentrate the worship of Jehovah at one shrine in Jerusalem. We now know from archaeology that the reason they had to push so hard to concentrate all of the worship of Jehovah in one place was precisely because they were building shrines and temples outside of Jerusalem, and that was perfectly ordinary for most other Israelites.
It's true that in Judaism now, it's unthinkable that a temple be built outside of Jerusalem. But the fact is, among ancient Jews, that was clearly not impossible to conceive. We know, for example, of the temple in Tel Arad, to the south of Israel, near Beersheba, in the Negev. And that's a temple that everyone acknowledges was a Judite temple. It was devoted to Jehovah or Yahweh. And there's no question that it was built by pious Jews. Even more striking to me is a temple that was built in the 400s in Egypt, on the island of Philae in the Nile, near Aswan.
A lot of Jews fled to Egypt following the destruction of Jerusalem in 586 BC. They settled in various places. In two of those places, they actually built temples. One of those was built in Leontopolis, and one of them was built in Philae, which is called Elephantine by the Greeks, Elephant City, basically. These two sites were approved by the priests in Jerusalem.
But the Elephantine papyri themselves discuss how the Jews in Egypt asked for permission from the elders in Jerusalem, and they were granted the permission to build that temple.
We have the letter from the high priest in Jerusalem authorizing the construction of the temple. So it's still preserved. So we know that temples could be and were built by devout Jews outside of Jerusalem.
So when the Nephites arrive in a new world, one of the first things they need to do in order to live the law of Moses is to have a temple. And they've been commanded to keep the law of Moses. They even went to the great lengths of getting the brass plates so that they would have the law of Moses. Well, you can't run the system of law under the law of Moses without a temple. So it's perfectly natural and appropriate that they would build a temple in their new city.
It's wrong to impose current Jewish ideas on ancient Jews. You always have to be aware that ancient people may have thought differently about these things than we do. That's a common mistake throughout this video, is to impose a modern image on an ancient text.
So these weren't apostate Jews? They
No.
weren't a different sect?
They were certainly not apostate. The case in Egypt, for example, as shown by the fact that the high priest officially granted them permission to build the temple. Lehi functions in some ways in a priestly fashion. We also know that sacrifices could be offered by a non-Aaronite priest if he was a certain distance away from Jerusalem, a certain number of days' travel. Also, of course, from a Latter-day Saint point of view, the people of Lehi would have had the Melchizedek priesthood among them, which grants them the right to officiate in all the ordinances of the Aaronic priesthood. So for us, theologically, that's not a problem.